Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tuesdays with Tally. This is episode 18, and I'm your host, Brian Tally. The mission and the goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of some of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and on Spotify. The online information and handles are all located on the scrolling ticker at the bottom portion of your screen. Be sure to like and share the program as well. You can also support the program by going to Anchor FM or Spotify and clicking the support button. Also, become a program sponsor today. Get your gear, products, merchandise, or services out to the general public. Program sponsorships include a custom written script to advertise your business to its fullest potential to get the results you are looking for. To learn more, email me today at thetallybill@gmail.com. That's thetallybill@gmail.com. Folks, we have a very special guest joining us on today's program. As you can see, Ian is in a firehouse right now. And he is on duty right now, and he is working for his community as a volunteer fireman. Now, again, he's on call. So during this podcast, if for some reason the alarm sounds and he has to go, we will end the broadcast and we will pick it up when he gets back to the firehouse. But first, let me tell you a little bit about our guest. Today, we welcome Marine Veteran Ian Grinnals, a native of Central New York who grew up playing football and wrestling. Ian took athletics pretty seriously growing up, and he spent his free time at sport camps as well as Boy Scouts. At a young age, Ian took an interest in the military, and he eventually set sail on becoming a United States Marine. Ian deployed multiple times to the Middle East, then on to serve combat tours in Fallujah, Iraq. His time in the Marine Corps also sent him to New Orleans to provide humanitarian relief and aid due to Hurricane Katrina. When Ian got out of the Marine Corps, he went back home and shuffled through a few jobs just to pay the bills. Ian would end up landing a job at the VA, and he worked there for nearly 12 years. Ian now works in the private sector, pulling security full-time, and is also a volunteer fireman in his community. Ian is happily married and has 3 kids. And with that, we are welcome to be joined by Ian Grinnals himself. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Another day, another dollar, another podcast, and hopefully another life will be changed today by the wisdom from you.
Oh, let's hope so, right?
It's all that's the mission of this podcast, is to
absolutely,
change one life at a time, man. You know, just through real life people and real life experience from somebody such as yourself. Now, you know, I know we've got a lot to talk about here because, you know, you've got a tremendous career. You know, you've done a lot of things in your life. You know, you got a great family, kids. But let's learn a little bit about who you are. Can you tell us a little bit where you grew up and what was life like as a kid?
Life was pretty good. I grew up in Central New York, Syracuse, New York area. I went to a decent school. I was very involved in sports and Boy Scouts until like high school, and then sports kind of took a priority from there. I grew up with a pretty decent group of guys. You know, getting in a fair amount of trouble in the process, but it's part of that life lesson. You learn what not to do by doing it, right? So, you know, I probably made my fair share of mistakes growing up, but it definitely gave me a different perspective in life. And I think it kind of also prepared me a little bit for my future military career, because not shying away from making decisions and not shying away from the risk of maybe getting in trouble and doing the things you got to do. You know, everybody gets scared to go to boot camp because they're worried about getting yelled at. But if you get yelled at your whole life, it's just kind of the normal routine. So I think that, you know, though it was kind of problematic as a kid, it was definitely influencing experience that got me where I am today.
Sure, sure. Describe what Central New York is like.
Well, that's a tricky question.
Well,
Geography. All right. Geography wise, okay, yeah.
We're good friends. I see you posting all the time. You got a cigar, you got a drink, and you're sitting around a campfire. And to me, it reminds me of small town USA, Mayberry.
Yeah, I definitely I spent a lot of time. Like I never lived in the city of Syracuse, so I've always lived either in the suburbs or been out at camps, or my family had a farm and that kind of stuff. So I was out in the environment. I was out in nature a lot. I still spend a lot of time out in nature. I don't know if it's due to like that kind of connection I had as a kid, or just my hobbies. But if it was up to me, if I could sit by a fire with some friends, that's ideal. Some people like going out and getting a little bit crazy, and that doesn't seem to be necessarily my go-to. So for me, that outdoors connection is super imperative.
Absolutely. I've never been a big nightclub guy. I am a campfire guy.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where the magic happens. A lot of good stories, a lot of reminiscing, and out in nature, and just take it all in. It's very relaxing, and it's definitely something that you can't go wrong with it, really.
Right.
And even if you're just by yourself, a lot of good time to just sit and think and relax, and kick your feet up and just enjoy the great outdoors, man. So
yeah. No, I love it, man. Like hiking, fishing, hunting, all that kind of stuff is really my cup of tea. I know a lot of people that aren't from New York State hear New York and think New York City, but it's the contrary. Like I only go into the city for work. I live outside the city. I stay outside the city. It's a lot more suburban, rural areas than it is any major metropolitan area. So I think that misconception is sometimes, caught up in the name of New York, but it's not necessarily the style of life I live.
Yep. It's just like saying California.
Yeah.
A very small portion of California is the tall buildings and the concrete jungles, but the majority of the state is the farm belt. And, it's full of farmers and cows and, all your fruits and vegetables and, everything is grown out there. And so, there is two different parts of the state, if you will. So, but I know what you mean by just what people automatically think. They automatically assume, oh, wow, he's from, he lives in skyscrapers and all that stuff. But, but that's just the way it is, right?
Yeah.
So let's get into a little bit about what you did, in high school, with your football and with your wrestling. What I've always considered the coaches that coached me as mentors. Did you have the same experience with your coaches, almost as if like they're your drill instructors going in through high school and preparing you even more for life than what they are actually coaching you as you play on the field?
I would say 100%. I think that the time that some of these guys take out of their own personal lives to make sure you're not only doing good on the field, but off the field. A lot of my coaches were also some of the teachers. I had a history teacher that was also one of my football coaches. And the minute he heard I wasn't doing good in a class, he yanked me out of class, set me up with a teacher, and made me stay after school every single day, or he wouldn't let me play in order for me to maintain my grades so that I was academically eligible. And it was mostly out of laziness that I wasn't doing well in school, because it was just, stupid teenage, I'd rather go do something else kind of thing. And he's like, no, get your head in the game, start focusing. I also had another coach who taught me the proper respect for proper aggression, like channeling your aggression. I was a bigger guy, stronger guy, and a lot of guys assume that if you're the big guy, you're the bully. And instead of being the bully, we just brought it to the field, and we crushed it on the field. And when we got off the field, it's high fives and moving on to the next thing. I think a lot of people look at jocks or athletes and come off with this, the arrogance or whatever. And he made sure that you were so damn tired after practice or so damn tired after a game, You wouldn't even fathom being that guy, because like double sessions for football, he would load his truck full of logs and we'd have to tow his truck in neutral across the entire school parking lot like a bajillion times. Just to, that's the level this guy went to make sure you were pushing it to your max. And in the course of like developing as an adult and whatnot, I've gained a lot of respect, and in turn I've become friends with these guys. Moving out of school, and now I associate with them on a man-to-man level, and I have a great respect for who they are as people, as fathers, as coaches, and in certain cases I try to emulate some of those characteristics with myself and my kids, and helping out like with the sports programs for my kids, because I know how hard it is to be a coach, and I know how hard it is to try to get that many kids on the same page, especially as understaffed as a lot of these athletic programs are right now.
Yeah. I played sports, and, my kids all are very heavily involved in sports, and we've been blessed to have very, very good coaches. And these coaches instill a lot of life lessons, and, everything is geared around, winning. And it's also set up, you're going to fail too. But it's ultimately how you react to those situations, when you win or when you lose, the discipline that's involved, and really, like you said, it is academics before athletics. And if you balance those two, you're not going to be playing. So, I think that's a very good point that you make. Now, let's get into, you graduated high school and you left for boot camp. You joined.
I actually spent an entire summer, and between the two, I went to Greece for the Olympics in 2004. So I got to see a little bit of the world before I joined the Marine Corps as well.
Oh, wow. What was that like?
It's super cool. I have the awesome advantage or luck that my aunt is married to a guy from Greece. So we have a good connection in Greece, and it happened to be that was the year that relations to the people in Greece, even though they're like through marriage, they're people that I know real well. And it was cool to see them, and to see the Olympics, and to see the world as a 18-year-old who is kind of new to the greater world experience, if you will. It gave me a good it gave me a little bit of a world experience that I wouldn't have got otherwise.
What inspired you to join the Marine Corps, Ian?
Oh, so I watched way too many war movies as a kid. Like, I grew up watching John Wayne and Rambo and all this stuff. And I kind of was interested in the military. But the thing that really nailed it to being a Marine was when I was younger. I asked my father to bring me to like a military base, because I wanted to see what a military base is like. So he planned this trip to Annapolis, the Naval Academy. And a friend of our son was going to Annapolis at the time, and he scheduled a tour with him. So we got to go get a full tour up and down, see all the ins and outs of the Naval Academy, which is super cool. And I was pretty excited about it. I'm like, that's awesome. And then right when we were leaving, we passed the gate, and there was this like picture perfect, squared away, like poster child of the Marine Corps with a big stack of ribbons, high and tight, just muscle bound dude. And I'm like, I don't care what I just saw. How do I become that guy?
Right. Yeah. I think we all have that experience. So
in hindsight, I'm like, why would I want to be a gate guard? I don't know. But at the same time, that dude, I don't know if it just like clicked. It's like that guy looked so squared away, had his whole head squared on perfectly. And I was like, I got to be that guy. So I kind of started looking into the Marine Corps, which I wasn't all that familiar with at that point. And I started seeing some of the programs that they had, and the fact that some of their programs were relatively selective, and even the Marine Corps in general was a bit more selective as to who they took in on recruit and all that. So it seemed to me like, coming from the athletic, the competition background, I wanted to do something better than just the bare minimum. And to me, that was the Marine Corps. I look at it with a obviously a little bit of bias now that I'm a Marine, because I think the Marine Corps is awesome. But even back then, I had that ambiance that the Marine Corps gave off, that spirit de corps, the invincibility factor. It's just everybody looked like like Billy Badass, and everybody seemed to me to, even the normal recruiters seemed more squared away than other branches. So for me, just seeing that guy at the Annapolis Naval Academy just sparked something in my head. And the more and more and more I dived into the different aspects of the Marine Corps, I liked it even more. And then it was just locked in my brain. Like there was nothing that was going to change where I was going.
Right. You wanted to challenge yourself, being an athlete, you knew that going to Marine Corps boot camp was going to be, the toughest, service boot camp there is. And, you wanted to challenge yourself, and that the Marine Corps would do just that for you. And, to go back to that poster child, that right there is special duty, because that is representing a service academy, and very sacred ground there in Annapolis, Maryland. So they will definitely uphold the highest, traditions of the Marine Corps. And they're going to put somebody there that is squared away. They will not have anybody that is not even just a little bit, unsapped, if you will, because that is something right there that you have got to put the highest standards.
And you're going to have a lot of eyes on that place too. Oh, yeah. So they're going to want their best candidates for that position.
Yep. You get hand selected for jobs like that. It's like, and there is a such thing, like you said, it's poster Marines, and that's what helps a recruiting. I mean, look at you. It helped, right?
Oh, 100%.
So that right there was better than any Marine Corps commercial.
I could have been in the Coast Guard if I didn't see that guy.
You're right. Hey, man, ain't nothing wrong with the Coasties. You know what I mean?
No, I like busting balls, man. I got all the respect for everybody, man.
No, I know, man. I love it. Okay. You're in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And you do some, a couple of combat tours. And you ultimately serve your country honorably.
Yep.
You get out and you begin this transition from the Marine Corps, from being a combat veteran to returning to the civilian life. What was that like?
I thought I would be more prepared, I guess. And then come to find out, my mindset was definitely not in civilian mode. I was very accustomed to having a barracks, having a steady paycheck, having all of my ducks in a row without having to do much, because the system kind of does it for you with the military specifically. And I came home with a bunch of money from deployments, because I got all my deployment tax-free money or whatever. So I came back with more money than I'd ever had in my bank account. Mm-hmm. And not having set up ahead of time a job or all of the things that cost money, I started just burning through all of the money that I had acquired from my last deployment, thinking it would like sustain me for a little while in that transition. Mm-hmm. And between just not understanding finances and trying to hang with some of my buddies that maybe go out and party a little bit too much, or, I did a lot of traveling back then. That shit cost a lot of money. And financially, it was not a great choice. But because I made those bad choices, it forced me to start ratcheting down, taking some more responsibility. I always considered myself kind of like the willy-nilly, just do what I want to do whenever I got to do it. Well, eventually you got to pay the piper. And I think causing myself a little financial hardship coming back really turned the screws on, okay, it's game time. This is real life. There's no, government paycheck coming. There's no duty NCO to tell you not to be a retard. It's you. You got to be that guy. So, I started trying to, I ended up picking up a couple of dumb jobs that didn't pay the bills. So I really had to hunt and write a resume. And they do the SEPs and TAPs program. I'm not sure how familiar you are with that, but it gave me like a little bit of insight as to like what I should be doing, but didn't really give me the footprints to how to do it. Mm-hmm. So I had to really just buckle down and do it myself. Like nobody showed me how to write a resume. I had a little write a resume for idiots book, and I sat down and actually, luckily enough, I had a friend of mine who had gotten out a couple years, maybe a year and a half before me. And he gave me, when he got out, it was like civilian to military translation book. I forgot the name of it, but it was like, it's a cheat sheet for writing resumes. So like if you operated a tank, you can put on your resume, heavy equipment operator. And it had all of these lingo translations. So I started just sitting down and thinking of all of the training and all of the machines and all of the weapons. And I turned it into, a resume for, my AAV. So I drove Amtrak's in the Marine Corps, and I drove 7 tons and MRAP. So I had a really good resume for heavy machine operator, motor vehicle operators, truck driving, all that kind of stuff, without actually having driven a tractor trailer or driven heavy machinery. It gave me the translation to say that I had the quote unquote experience. That helped me out a lot. And then I continued that by furthering my education a little bit. Mm-hmm. But it was me getting out there and doing it. It wasn't like in the Marine Corps, they're like, all right, well, today's period of instruction is, and it tells you where you're going, or today's, duty roster list says that we're going to be on this, and this set of training. I just had to start going and doing it myself, trying to figure out the GI Bill, trying to figure out, furthering my education, getting a job in the process. While I was going to school, I went to a tractor trailer school for like a job experience, or for like trade school. Mm-hmm. I still had to bounce every night. So I'd go to school for 6-7 hours a day. I'd go home. I'd bounce for 4 or 5 hours a night, pay the bills, because the GI Bill only pays a portion, and this school only accepted a portion of it. So I ended up having to take student loans out and doing all the same things, but nobody gave me the step-by-step, which is kind of good, and it's also kind of a false sense of security that some of the military folks get, because it's there for you. There's a footprint for everything. There's a rule or a protocol or an instructor for everything in the military. Then you step out in the real world and it's like, good luck, here's the keys, don't crash.
Yeah, so you're saying that you actually structure your life in a responsible manner to pay your bills while you went through the GI Bill after serving combat in Fallujah, Iraq, and nobody's paid your bills for you?
No. I had to pay them all, and I had to work. That's crazy. I know.
Wow. And then you had to work too? Man, that's, yep. If you want your college bills to be paid off, perhaps everybody should serve some time in the military. That's just my take on that. But we won't dive into that now, because this is about you. This is about Ian Grinnals. Right. Who you are as a man, and the value that you're adding right now to our listeners. Now, you've said a lot of important things, and I know once you get out, of course, everybody's going to go through this turbulent time. I got money, I'm going to go out and party, blah, blah, blah. You're still young, but wisdom is acquired through experience.
Oh yeah.
We evolve, we grow, we develop, we mature, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if you had to do it all over again, would you have taken that same path? Because it's ultimately put you on the path you are right now, which is a path of success.
Right.
Would you have taken a step back now, hindsight 2020, and said, you know what? I really wish I would have done it this way.
I'm very much on the mindset that if I wish I had changed, I don't wish I'd changed anything, because I'm happy where I am. I think that where I am is where I'm supposed to be. That being said, if I could have invested my money a lot more effectively, like 25 years ago, if I had known like, half of what I know right now, at least on like a responsibility, like not so much experience. I would want to experience all the things that I experienced. If I could have done that better, that probably would have led me a little farther than I am now, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. I always tell everybody, like, military experience wise, a lot of people are like, sum up your military experience. And I say, you know what? I would not trade it for anything in the whole world. I'm glad that I don't have to do it again, because where I am right now is where I want to be. I would not trade it for the world, because in the same time period that I was going to boot camp, doing my training, getting deployed, doing the whole Marine Corps, enlistment, my friends were going off to college. And at the same time period, I can see a massive divergence with 90% of those people, and find out that, what's up, my man? Oh, he's in there. Just go up to the front door. you can see the same time period and the lack of maturity and the lack of responsibility and the lack of the understanding of the real world, because they're still stuck in this isolated college environment, which it protects them from actually experiencing things. Though there was a footprint and maybe a little bit of a safety mechanism in the Marine Corps, like they kind of let you fail. They kind of let you learn the lesson the hard way, which I don't think necessarily the college environment does that. And I'm not saying that college is bad or anything. There's definitely, I want certain people to go to college, but I see the same people I went to high school with. And when I got out and I was learning all the mistakes and I was trying to get my finances in order and I was trying to get, a career path, these guys were all moving back in with their mom and living in the basement because they didn't know what to do, because there's no more, dorm room to live in or no more frat house anymore. Right. So I kind of looked at it like I was a leg up on a majority of these people, even though like I'm sure they're doing really well now and I'm sure their college degrees help them out in the long run. I look at some of these people and I make as much money as most of those guys now. I have a very successful career in multiple career fields, and I have a super awesome family I wouldn't trade for the world, while some of these people are just still diving into a career that they're barely touching because it took them 4 or 8 years to get their footing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 3 words come to mind with what you just said: structure, discipline, and experience. You had structure, in the Marine Corps. We had certain days and times and things we had to be everywhere. And if you weren't there, well,
you're accountable.
You had to see the company gunny or the first sergeant or the CEO, and that wasn't going to be good.
Yeah. You had to be there 15 minutes prior just to make sure you were there.
Oh yeah. I'm always 15 minutes prior to being 15 minutes prior. So if they say, be here at, 1500, I'm there at, 1430. Right. So, it's always hurry up and wait, but that's why we aren't late for stuff. We are on time. We show up with passion. We show up with purpose. We show up with discipline, and we get things done. And that is exactly how it should be for anybody that, served, not only in the Marine Corps, but in the military as general, to bring that professionalism, to our towns and our communities, and to essentially give back like you're doing right now as a volunteer fireman. Now, the career path that you took eventually when you got out of the Marine Corps landed you working for the Department of Veterans Affairs. Yep. What was that like?
So I got a job driving truck, and I had gone to that tractor trailer school. I had moved around. I worked in a warehouse and drove truck for a warehouse for a while. And it's a really interesting, it's a lot different now than it was, 15 years ago. And now they pay pretty good. At the time, they were not paying very good for training. And I was just trying to get my foot in a door with a successful company. And they were kind of cutthroating each other with training pay and all this stuff. And it really wasn't doing what I needed to do. So I was moving into the security field that I had already kind of done with bouncing in some private security that I dabbled in. And the security field I was trying to go into ended up getting locked out. So I went to one of those job placement things, and they're like, hey, what do you like to do? I was like, well, I'm a Marine. I have a tractor trailer's license. And I started to list more things. And they're like, would you like to drive for the VA? And I was like, what? They're like, yeah, would you like to be a motor vehicle operator at the VA Medical Center? I was like, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. I like working with veterans. I like driving. Driving's one of my favorite things to do. I love traveling. So they're like, all right, here's an application. It's a temporary position. So, maybe this will get your foot in the door, or at least give you a little bridge to the next place that you're going. So I got there, I applied for the job. Come to find out, because it's a pretty sweet gig and they pay pretty good, there's 300 something candidates for this job. And for whatever reason, I went in there because I'm not great with technology or whatnot. So I had done the the resume process, and I didn't know if it's sent in. So I was like, I'm just going to go and hand in my resume just in case it didn't go through. And I went in and everyone looked at me like I was an idiot because everyone emails all their stuff now. And I go in, I'm like, hey, I'm just going to give you this just because, and I'm not trying to get like preferential treatment or whatever. But come to find out, the manager at the time was also a Marine, and him and I started talking a little bit, and we got back and forth, and then about 3 weeks later, I got a call saying I got the job. So I was like, oh, cool, temporary job, whatever. That temporary job got extended because of the need, got extended again because of the need. And as the patient level was rising in the Syracuse area, so was the need for medical transportation. So they ended up transitioning me from temporary to permanent status. And that was like almost 12 years ago. I started doing it, working there. It started off actually as like one of the best jobs I've ever had. And I'm not going to say it was a bad job, but over the course of time, I can see the VA making transitions to, I don't know, the Syracuse VA specifically was the best, if not the top 10 for 10 years straight, right? They were one of the best VAs in the country. They had built all these new additions with all these new programs, spinal cord injury wings, and I was super stoked to be a part of that. But if you remember that fiasco with the Phoenix VA and their like alternate list of people that were supposed to be getting appointments, when that got really, really, really bad press, the VA decided at some point to become a monolith. Instead of letting all of the hospitals do what they do best, or in some cases do what they do worst, they treated them all the same and kind of lowered the standard of really good ones so that they would meet the standards of increasing the standards on the really bad ones. And in doing so, I felt that that was kind of the beginning of a less than productive decision-making process. And everybody started to become more of an HR person than a patient advocate. And we're always talking at the VA about, they have this I Care program, and it's an acronym for a bunch of different stuff. But if you truly care, you should be the patient advocate. Even if you're the driver or the medical director and anybody in between, you should be there to take care of the patient. And I think as a patient and as a veteran, I tried to do that a lot of times, and it conflicted with some policies, and it conflicted with new management that ended up coming in. And I had trouble with that, which is one of the reasons I ultimately decided to, more or less give up a 15-year federal service retirement to move into the private sector in order to get a job that better fits my mentality on what I expect from an employer and what I expect from myself in my work environment. I was just kind of becoming a little bit ornery every time people would give me a lecture about something that I've been doing for 11 years, when in reality, I'm doing exactly what I was doing for 11 years. And you're telling me that all of a sudden that doesn't meet protocol. Well, then we've been out of protocol for 11 years. Yeah. I think that what they do is, all right, as soon as you're out, I'll head in there. Cool, man. As soon as they started doing that, as soon as they started nitpicking instead of finding more productive ways, I've always looked at a problem as an obstacle to get over, not to drive a nail into. So they're just sitting there making a mountain out of a molehill when we have so many other things, so many other moving parts that need to get addressed, and they'll pull you off of work so they can tell you don't park here. Okay. All right. Well, whatever floats your boat, man.
Yeah. VA leadership, some are, do really well. Some are very poor, but it all boils down to the individual who was put in charge. And a lot of the times you got these unelected bureaucrats who are absolutely destroying the system. And you stand back and you look at it and you say, how does this even happen? And I know a lot of Americans have woken up over the years and due in part to social media. There's more out there. We get to see more. We get to, have eyes on a lot of these issues that people have brought to the forefront, essentially shining a light on a very dark place. Yeah. And I'm not saying the VA is a dark place. I'm saying any problem in America that is ran by, the bureaucrats and, the government. It seems as if it is broken. And, and you look at the private industry, when you've got checks and balances and you've got profits to be made, you're going to run that business a lot more efficiently than if you were in there just to garner a paycheck, just to earn a paycheck, work your 9 to 5 and not really care really about the mission.
Yeah. And I think healthcare right now is taking a big hit. COVID did a number on all healthcare, nationwide, but not to find a point on it, federally run healthcare is going to be always the worst healthcare there is because it's not their money, right? They're looking at, all right, I'll have them there then. They 11, Roger. They take this as a challenge, like, oh, we have to build this $75 million addition without any comprehension of whose money it is.
Right.
And I think that that's one of the problems that we're running into is they're not accountable for their money, but they pretend like they're out there trying to save a buck. And that's really a disconnect between the private sector and necessarily the federal portion of it.
Right. The two don't equate. You've got one in there, that's working, for the good of the business, with profits and everything and running it, again, with checks and balances. And then you have another organization that just is fed $300 billion a year and they do, with it, what they want. And, again, very, very little bit of the time that the federal government is actually working in the best interest of the actual taxpayer and the American citizen. But,
it's weird to me that, like, for people who spend so much money on frivolous things, that when it comes to spending money on productive things, we're very hesitant to do it, right? Like, for instance, like the transportation department, which is kind of where my focus of the VA would have a huge issue about purchasing new vehicles, but we would pay third-party entities to supplement the fact that we don't have more vehicles or drivers. But we're okay paying these people, but you won't provide them yourself. So, like, the disconnect between paying millions of dollars to third-party people and then turning around and saying, well, it's not a priority enough so that we'll actually provide it ourselves. But it's the same value of money. It's just where you're going to direct it. You get less money for your buck if you're paying a third party for it. You know what I mean? So for me, I was always wondering how that equated in some of the decision makers process. And unfortunately, that leadership, or sometimes lack thereof, trickles downhill. And that mentality, if you will, slowly, makes its way into like departments, department heads, like smaller departments within, and everybody starts doing, well, fuck it. I'll hire somebody for that.
Yeah. The federal government spends millions and millions and millions of dollars to get private people to come in to investigate things, to give them advice on business strategy and all this stuff. And they feed them the same information that they already know.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make any sense. Again, like, when are we going to wake up as a country and say, we are the people, we pay all this money for taxes, and we don't have any say on where this money goes or where it's spent? And it seems as if many members of Congress, have forgotten that they do work for the people. Awesome. And the crazy thing is, I don't see a lot of that. I mean, there's very, very few.
I see almost none of it.
It's as if they are working for overseas interests more than the American people. And that's
and if it's not overseas interest, it's self-interest. And that actually is just as aggravating, because the reality is that we're out here working our tails off for the majority of us to pay our taxes so that somebody can spend our money in ways that are not beneficial to us. Like, where's the accountability? Like, everybody expects us to be accountable. We need to pay our taxes. We need to follow the laws. We need to be respectful to our community. We need, like, they set all these rules and regulations for you and me to follow, but somehow the double standard doesn't apply to them. And that's what blows my mind.
It's called accountability and transparency. And
exactly.
You and I need to live that type of life, but they don't have to, because they're playing by a different set of rules.
Yes.
And again, our framers did not have that in mind when the greatest country in the world was being developed, if you will. When we became 1776. So it was never intended to be working the way it is right now. And I understand.
A lot of that is somewhat on our shoulders. And I say ours, like the civilian population, the people of this country let a lot of things slide a long time ago. And that slide gets gradually steeper and steeper. And we are stuck on this downward slide because of the lack of responsibility and accountability 100 years ago. And now we're sitting here eating the pie that they made, Well,
and you got to understand too, the working class people, they're not going to sit around and just, bitch and complain about everything, because they got to get up, they got to go to work, they got to take care of their family, they got to provide, they got to pay their taxes.
Isn't that part of the problem? They're keeping us occupied with that garbage so that we can put food on the table. We're actually working right now to put gas in the tank to go back to work, because the cost of food and fuel is literally driving us to work more and do more, so that we're incapable of being the people who are a nag or a thorn in the political side. Because, your experience, as unfortunate as it was, if you don't mind me saying, was also a blessing, because it gave you the time to be your own voice in Congress. Whereas most people, like you said, I would love to have the opportunity to do some of the interactions that you had the time to do. But I'm stuck knowing that I have to be at work and that I have to do my obligations that are, filling up those blocks of time that don't allow that. And I think that's somewhat of the plan, unfortunately. And if it's not a direct plan, it's an indirect plan because of policy failures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Like you had brought up, I worked in Congress for over 2.5 years. The bills are behind me, those 4 bills. And I was relentless and I was tenacious, but a man on a mission. I lived in the only U.S. congressional district, United States of America, that didn't have a sitting member of Congress, because he was forced out of Congress because he screwed up and they lost all confidence in him. So here I was, no voice, no nothing. It was, essentially taxation without representation. And, and I showed up, I drafted my own bill. I showed up and I walked those halls of Congress, and I did the job of a congressman. And I also did the job that they have failed to do. For 74 years, this loophole has been in effect. And essentially, the only way I could get this job done in the most divided Congress in our nation's history was to go in there absolutely nonpartisan. These guys don't even know what my political affiliation is. I earned a seat at that table. I brought a solution to the table, like any real American would, right? If you see a problem, us as Americans, it's our duty. It's our duty to stand up and say, I have a solution. I have a better way here.
Yeah.
This is how we can do it. And here's the blueprint. Now,
it used to be that you could use your representative for that. It used to be that. But now, even, in your circumstance, you didn't have one. But for instance, I've been in nonstop contact over some issues that I'm having locally and on a state level with my state and local governance. Mm-hmm. And all I get is a letter in the mail occasionally saying, thank you for, reaching out to your local congressman. Well, thank you for the piece of paper and a giant FU, because that did nothing for me. That didn't even show me that you were attempting to resolve the problem. And when I call your office, not that I expect every congressman or senator to personally call me back, but I seldom get a call back. I got a call back from 2 of my state assembly people, and that was because they didn't understand what my question was, and they were trying to have me reframe it. And so I'm at a place in my life where I have a lot of issues that I'm trying to redress with my government, but there's no mechanism other than what you're doing. And to do that would require me to have to not be a volunteer fireman, not work a full-time job, not be as dedicated a parent as I can be, because those are the things that I'm putting my time into. I'd have to detract from those things in order to be my own advocate, and I don't have the availability. So I think that they base our busy schedules on some of the really bad decisions, knowing that all the people that would be negatively impacted by this are just going to be too busy to confront them on that.
And the system is set up accordingly. They don't want you getting involved. They don't want you advocating.
No.
They want to play by their own set of rules that they've been playing by for far too long, for generations. And it's just gotten worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And, you know, these empty letters that they send are slaps in the face. You're talking to a combat veteran.
Yeah.
And he can't get an answer on a simple question. The amount of emails and private messages that I get on a daily basis, Ian, is astounding.
Right.
Are frightened. People they get to the point where they're feeling helpless.
Yeah.
And they're hopeless.
Yeah.
This is the United States of America. and our people, our veterans, are feeling as if they've been forgotten. And unfortunately,
to be honest, some of them have.
Yeah, you know, and they slip through the cracks. Now, look, not everybody. We're not talking as a whole here, but we are talking a very, very large, vulnerable community out there has been completely abandoned. And, you know, that's our job. You know, that's our calling is to get those veterans the help they need in a timely manner and to share those resources and to share this life value with them. Perhaps they're going through some hard times. Perhaps they don't have a voice. And so it's up to us to give the voiceless a voice. And that's exactly where I want to get into you right now. Is you do give back. I mean, you are an American servant. You have given your entire life to serving this country. And what you do now over at the American Program Syndicate is truly remarkable. Could you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So I think it's been 4 or 5 years now that I've kind of been dabbling in a medium that is thriving right now. I've had conversations with people over the years, specifically with my veteran friends or some of my high school friends that I grew up with. But I realized that having the conversation on this micro scale was only a one-on-one interaction. I wanted to have these conversations because I think that a lot of people have benefited from them on a larger scale. So 4 or 5 years ago, I started the American Program Syndicate on Facebook. It's literally just a page where I go on and maybe a little bit more in depth talk about some of the things that are happening. I started doing this with the intention of not getting too political, because I think there's a lot of things that the American idea and the American dream and the concept of what America is or supposed to be can be interacted. But unfortunately, over the last 4 or 5 years, politics has kind of wrapped everything, and there's really no way to skirt the fact that politics, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, are going to affect that. So some of my content is maybe a little bit politically motivated, but I hope that it's engaging enough that makes people think. And I don't care if you agree with me. I don't care if you disagree with me. I want you to engage your brain and come up with some constructive ideas that are going to be beneficial. And so the scale that I kind of try to look at is, what are you doing to better yourself, your family, and then your community? And you got to do it in that order. And the reason I say that is kind of like the oxygen mask on an airplane, right? Like they always tell you, put your oxygen mask on before trying to help somebody else. Because if you pass out, you're no help to the guy next to you, your kids or whomever. So I think a lot of people always want to be like, oh, we need a new president. Okay, that's going to happen every 4 years. We're going to complain about it, bitch about it. We each got our ideas. But the one guy is not really the end all be all. The fact is, if you're not in a good footing and you're not in a good place, your mindset is not ideal, then you really are not making the most beneficial decision-making processes. If your family's not in a good place, you might not be in a good footing to make decisions based off of how your family is. So I think if you, your family, and your community are put in check in those orders, you can start affecting things bigger than that. But if you can't even manage bettering yourself, then your opinion on bettering the country is in my honest opinion, is less effective, because I'm going to be like, you want to change the country like this, but you can't even clean up your own backyard.
Right.
So I think that the American Program Syndicate is out there trying to show a little bit about some time management, some finance management, some recreational management. I think people don't give themselves enough downtime to decompress and focus on getting your mind straight. You know, in the veteran community, we talk about stress, PTSD, suicide awareness, and all those things. I think a lot of those major issues can be addressed with just a little relaxation. And I think mental focus is like any other muscle, right? Your brain, if you're working out 24/7, you're going to strain something, right? If you're stressed out 24/7, you're going to strain something. It really takes time. You have to budget time for you to decompress. And I kind of throw that in there too. You alluded to the sitting by the fire, smoking cigars, and occasionally having a bourbon or two. And I think that whether you utilize those mechanisms or you have some other mechanism, I want to see that. I want to interact with those people. I want to see what your opinion is on your downtime. I find, it's very therapeutic for me to go to the range, and range time is big for me. So I like to hear what other people like to do if they go to the range, the things they like to shoot, or if they're hunting or outdoor activities, because maybe that activity or maybe the way that you do something, if you can interact on my page, helps affect other people positively. Then I think we all did something. Like if you're doing that incremental help, if you're helping yourself and your community just a little bit, you're better off today than you were yesterday. The American Program Syndicate, it's nothing fancy. I'm not out here trying to raise money. I'm not trying to do anything. I'm just trying to get people to open up, have conversations, engage their mind, and utilize the American ideal for what it was designed for. It was designed to be a cauldron of ideas, of cultures, of ways of life, all merging into something beneficial for everybody. It's not a way to divide. It's not a way, and I don't say argue, because I do think that having different opinions is beneficial, but I think it needs to be done in a constructive manner. And sometimes having a third party forum for people to discuss things gives a little bit of structure, instead of just name calling and saying you're on this side or that side, or I'm right, you're wrong. And again, sometimes engagement is high and sometimes engagement is low, but I do it just as, a check in the box. So I can do random suicide awareness things. I throw out multiple times a year. If anybody has any issues, contact me, reach out to the American Program Syndicate, me personally, email me, whatever, because if calling me is the determining factor between ending your life and not, my phone is always open. My email is always open. The American Program Syndicate message thing is always there, and I answer damn near everything on there myself. It's on my phone. I have it with me all the time. So specifically to the veteran folk out there, anybody dealing with PTSD, that is 100% an option. If you don't want to call anybody else, call me.
You just have answered 3 of my next questions, and it's great that you did it all in succession, because what you have just offered there is great advice, and it's wisdom, and it's showing that TAPS is indeed leading by example and doing it all for the right reason. You're doing it all for the right reasons. You're not out there to make money, or to have a 501c3 set up to where this is your business, and you're constantly just in that realm doing it full time. And a lot of guys get caught up in that with just selling the t-shirts and the hats and all that other stuff, and a lot of the times not everybody, of course, there's a lot of phenomenal veteran organizations out there, but there's also a lot of guys out there that are, making, a lot of money off the backs of veterans.
Yeah.
And a lot of those guys are taking that money and they're pocketing it, in the name of,
Well, I do advise people. There is a website. I can't think of it off the top of my head. Before people donate money to anybody, look into some of the charities beforehand. Look into the output of money. Look into any investigations that they may or may not have because of their nonprofit status. There's a lot of scams out there.
But ultimately what I was saying is that you're doing this for all the right reasons. You're doing this for the good of the country. There is no financial gain here at all for you. Yeah. You're just a good guy, that has a beautiful family.
Thank you.
Served this country honorably and has contributed to society in an honorable way. And you are giving, again, your life to your community. And another thing that we touched on that I thought was very clever of you when you talked about fixing one person, because if you can't pick up the dog shit in your backyard and you have a problem with your congressman, that doesn't make sense to me, because if you can't take care of your own shit, how do you expect somebody else to take care of their shit in a way that would make sense to you?
Yeah.
So, people have got to understand that. And, what I've said before in this program, it always starts in your town.
Yeah.
Get your town straight. And then that will spread to your city. And then it spreads to your county. And then it spreads to your state. And then it spreads to the country. And again, living, in a country, the way that it was intended to be lived in, with law and order and with people paying, their fair share and to contribute into this country that we should all be very, very grateful for, because there's nothing, there's not a country like it out there. Even with all the problems we got, there's still no place like America.
No, and I think a lot of people are making some pretty bold assertions and never having left this country to see kind of what the world has to offer. Sure. Not that I am, the most versed world traveler, but I've done a fair amount of traveling throughout the world, and I've seen a lot of cultures, good, bad, first world, third world problems. I've seen it. I've seen a lot of it, and I can base a lot of my life experiences on that. And I'll tell you, even with our faults, I would not trade the United States for anything, because we are blessed enough to have this communication device at the tip of our fingers right now, where I can talk to you and you're in Texas. Like there's people that if they wanted to travel this distance, have a conversation, they'd have to walk. You know what I mean? Yeah. We are blessed here by, whatever it is people, hold dear. But I find that this country has more to offer than any other place in the world. So,
yeah. And to end on this, because I know we're short on time here, this has been a great interview, but people, and Chris Ledoux has said it best, and I've said it before in this program, we have more in common with people than what we think. If you sit down and have a conversation, you will agree. You'll have more in agreements than you will in disagreements.
I try to start a conversation with something that we can agree on with anybody, find just like a smidge of common ground. Because if you start on a disconnect, you're only going to make that wedge greater. But if you start same level, you can kind of go incrementally. You know what I mean?
And of course, and it could even be something as little as you both like the same sports team.
Exactly.
You both like that. You order your burger the same way, and now you have that ground there to continue the conversation. And again, you're going to find that you have more in common with these folks, with everybody, with your neighbor, with your colleagues, with your friends down the road, whoever it may be. But listen, we have got to close this. It's been a great interview. Thank you for joining us today, Ian. We sincerely appreciate everything you have done for our great nation. Your service, sacrifice, and dedication to our great nation is truly honorable. Until next time, for Tuesdays with Tally, this is Brian Tally. Good night, Semper Fi, and God bless.